Welcome back to another edition of Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by John Bryce of Football Scoop and Pete Sampson of The Athletic. Tim Priester will rejoin us on Monday. And guys, previewing Irish Invasion as we had kind of planned would be pointless as Irish Invasion is ongoing right now. And Brian Alt, Eric Thomas, and Drew Mentok are there for Irish Illustrated. I received word from Drew that the camp part has broken for the day, and now they can do some interviews with some of the prospects. So we are actually going to have a Monday podcast with the guys that were there to discuss Irish Illustrated. But since we are not there and we've been there in the past, I wanted to use a question that we had in segment two. It's from JJ Post, who is trying to get his friend of the show status back. He decided after cutting us down in last week's episode. In honor of Irish Invasion this week, can you recount any of your best stories of future college stars you might have seen at such a showcase and immediately known they were a cut above? I think that's the best part, regardless of whether they landed at Notre Dame or not. And I know we can both chime in on this, JB, but I wanted to turn it to Pete because Pete has been to a lot of these showcases, not only Irish Invasion, but all the others back in the day.
The guy that's like Jalen Smith doesn't really count for this. That's like too obvious an answer. But I will say, when I saw Sean Crawford compete at Irish Invasion, I was like, that guy is a dog. He was very aggressive, like not just like in the reps, but like getting the reps, like getting to the front of the line. And man, I was super impressed with him. And I think at the time, I don't know if Notre Dame had offered him already or not, but there was a time when Bob Diaco deemed him too short to be offered by Notre Dame. Um,
Right. He was
uh,
recruiting to type for a while, wasn't he, Diaco?
yeah, but wow, that was a player that you didn't really need to know a whole lot of football to be like, that guy is really, really good and will be good wherever he goes in college.
I was almost positive we were going to say Bo Scarborough, but we're talking Irish players.
Oh, that was he was very impressive in a seat,
Yeah.
but just in the bleachers at Notre Dame.
Uh,
JB, you've been to a few of these.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple. There's a couple that immediately leap to mind. One in South Florida along Miami Beach about 15 or so years ago, and it had LaMarcus Joyner, Teddy Bridgewater, and Orson Charles, all three there competing in various things. But LaMarcus Joyner was such a lockdown corner, and obviously he went on to Florida State and then played in the league for a while. And then there was one in Nashville, back to back over a couple of different years in Nashville. There was one, they were hosted by National Playmakers Academy, and Jalen Reeves-Maybin was like a competitive maniac on the field and like stealing reps from people and volunteering for everything from covering wideouts to covering tailbacks out of the backfield. And Reeves-Maybin's still playing for the Lions to this day. So that's a big one. But probably Jalen Ramsey as a freshman, seeing him
Ooh,
at an MPA super camp in Nashville. And as a freshman, he was able to lock down Josh Malone and some of these other guys that went on and Rashawn Golden, Vic Wharton, Brandon Wharton, these guys that played major college careers, and all of them had some NFL time, if not still playing in the NFL. But Jalen Ramsey, as a freshman, I was just like, this guy's one of the best prospects I'd ever seen. And I'd seen Eric Berry at a camp, and he was, outstanding. But Jalen Ramsey was this dude that was so fearless as a freshman, and like his arms were so long that like his fingertips almost touch his kneecaps just with his arms down to his side. It was crazy. So those are the ones that immediately jump to mind for me with your question.
I have a Jalen Ramsey story from Notre Dame. When Notre Dame almost beat Florida State down in Tallahassee on the penalty call, they targeted Jalen Ramsey, the passing game of the Irish, in the slot on 15 occasions. He gave up 2 receptions. 15 times they went after Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if he didn't make the scouting report or not. And also, by the way, 3 of the 4 times after that penalty was, or 3 of the 4, they had first and goal. 3 of the 4 times were targeting Jalen Ramsey, which doesn't work. He gave up a catch for 1 yard and drilled precise as well, incomplete, incomplete, and like the final pass as well. It's just that's not knowing your strengths and their strengths as well. That's a problem. I'll actually look back, Pete. The last 2 years ago, I was at Irish Invasion. I don't know if you were there last year. 2 years ago, I was at Irish Invasion, and
Yeah, I
we
was
were
there
there
last.
for we were there for CJ Carr
Yeah, I was there
mostly.
for that. And
Yeah.
that was actually the Aeneas Williams Irish
That was
Invasion,
the
not the
Aeneas
CJ
Williams.
Carr.
That is mine. Aeneas Williams, when I looked out there, was doing. He's the same type of guy. He was the front of the line, and he was working with the wide receivers. And my first thought was like, that guy's short for a wide receiver. And of course, I looked down and it's his athlete at that point. He was working with the wide receivers. Cam Williams was there as well, working with the wide receivers. And I remember thinking that guy'd be a really good slot receiver. And it turns out he's a running back that is a good receiver instead. But that was Caleb Beasley was there, JB. He was kind of the other
Um,
star of the camp, right? That was
yeah,
the probably one of the better players out there.
yeah.
And Pete, do you remember the quarterback that was like 6'6", lanky freshman that was so fast?
I
And we're
think he
looking at
ended
him
up in
like,
Kentucky, right?
yes, Cutter Boley ended up
Yes.
at Kentucky, and he ended up being a very like high 4-star at
Yeah.
some point. In that I think he was a freshman coming out at that point. That is,
Yeah, I
yeah,
liked
going
him.
to his sophomore season. Priester was a late scratch from this podcast, so we are going to have this discussion next week. But we wanted to touch on his story. Um, Former Notre Dame football player Jack Fields teamed with Pat Eilers, Pat Kramer, David Butler, and Tom Carter for the Jack and Kathy Shields Family Hall. Of course, it's going to be a beautiful facility. Priester had an exclusive with Shields, but JB, you have gotten to know Shields a little bit over the years as well, so I thought you could chime in Priester's stead until until he can discuss this one.
Yeah, been lucky to spend some time with Mr. Shields and Tom Carter, and I know as pleased as they are about being able to help with the Shields Family Hall, it really is just all about giving back. He wants every Notre Dame letter winner ever to have a place to come back to and feel at home with. But you would never know walking and talking to the guy that he's the one with his family name on Notre Dame's pristine new building, which, by the way, we all saw last week and is coming along quite nicely. It's already bricked up and looking like a lot of the rest of campus, just the way that the buildings are so stately and the architecture so uniform. But I mean, here's a guy that for no reason whatsoever has invited me down to Tampa to golf with him, and I'm neither worthy of that invite nor a good enough golfer to golf with Jack Shields, I'm sure. But that just speaks to who he is, and his son actually is, I think, director of pro scouting for the USF football program. And his son, to give you an idea of this family, his son started out as a volunteer intern at Louisiana Lafayette under Billy Napier. I think it might have been even right after Billy Napier left for Florida, and he joined with the other head coach or climbed from a student worker. But anyway, he was in this basically unpaid volunteer position, or he got paid for 20 hours a week just grinding. And I think that speaks to the essence of the Shields family. Like, they're workers, they're grinders, and they're some of the most humble people that you will ever spend any time around, but incredibly sharp. I love to talk ball with Jack because he wants to know your opinions, and if you have a bad one, he'll hold you on it. But if you can bring something to light to him that he finds interesting, he'll pick at it and he'll ask more questions about it. So, there's incredible people in the Notre Dame ecosystem. That's probably what's stood out to me the most in my time in South Bend, and he's right at the tip top of that list.
I think Tom Carter is the hidden answer to if someone had come back for his senior season, how it could have changed Notre Dame's fortunes, because he'd have been the corner pairing with Bobby Taylor in 1993, Pete Sampson in the famous Boston College game that people will never stop talking about until they get over that hump. And Pat Eilers actually provided me and my dad, who was teaching him musculoskeletal anatomy at the time, tickets to the last national championship Notre Dame won, the 1989 Fiesta Bowl of the 88 season. So
Wow.
that was pretty cool. They think yeah, when you get like whatever amount of tickets, he gave it to one of his professors and me. So that was pretty cool. And JB, if you can't golf, just show up and try to get involved in a cornhole game. I'm sure that I have been told that no matter what, you will impress him.
Nah, I would,
I haven't seen those skills yet, but
I wish my golf game was as adequate as my cornhole game.
you wouldn't be on this podcast if it was as
Yeah.
adequate as that.
No, I'd be in Tampa golfing with Jack.
I meant even higher aspirations. We've all done a few sit downs with players and coaches with film reviews. Last summer, I was with Coach Mike Mickens and Gino Gaduli. Pete, I know you'd been with Jack Kaiser and Drew Tranquil in the past. We even did some live in the Goog back in the day. I had Julian Love and Nick Coleman were going to describe plays in the Ball State game for me. They were nice enough to do that after that very close call against Ball State. But Pete Sampson had a sit down with head coach Marcus Freeman, and you can learn a little bit of football watching film with Marcus Freeman, I assume, Pete.
Yeah, a lot. And it was really cool to do. It's kind of a story that I've been pitching for quite a while. And it worked out that kind of did it after our kind of round table. And I think a couple things that struck me most were just like how into it he was. Like, I think for mean, you get this perception of him as a head coach. He's got the, the tailored suit and like the look and all that. And really, it's like once you put the tape on, he was like the linebackers coach at Kent State again. He really was passionate about it to the point that like the prep he put into me doing this like shocked me. That I thought, he asked what plays do you want to talk about in advance. I gave him 8. So we sit down and start going through this, and he's got like supporting evidence ready to go where he like hits the clicker, and we're watching Detroit, Seattle, Amon Ra throwback to Jared Goff, and he hits the clicker, and he's got Jack Kaiser busting a coverage against Virginia, and yeah, he was really into it. I learned a ton. I think that I also learned that a pet peeve of his is receivers who don't look for work in blocking. If you are a wide receiver and a running play comes your way unexpectedly and you don't block somebody, uh, that will get noticed. And it will probably stick with the head coach for 9 months after the fact.
Even on touchdowns, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It really doesn't matter the result of the play. I think that was another thing that I wanted to do is like, how many times have we heard him say, like, it's not outcome driven or results driven and I was like, okay, well, show me what this looks like when I see arguably the greatest 2-yard run in college football history. What do you see? It was like, well, I see a linebacker or a defensive back that shaded inside and that screwed up our blocking assignment and the receiver didn't pick anybody up. I was like, well, I saw Jeremiah Love score that touchdown. He's like, yeah, but I saw all this other stuff too. So that was really interesting part of it as well.
I don't know if it was after his first year, maybe people asked him what he missed most about being a coach, and the first thing he said was, I miss chopping it up with the guys on the
Yeah.
film room, because that's not something the head coach does. He doesn't go sit in the linebacker film room and do those things. I think he has a guy in Max Bulla that might like doing that these days as well. Yeah, that's a unique situation. I remember watching Great House in awe of the run, and you're not supposed to be in awe of the run, right? When when you're Jaden Greathouse and you have a job to do in that
He just
situation.
had a better vantage point than the rest of us.
Yes, you did. We were all in awe of the run.
And I did want to throw in the Xavier Watts interception against Indiana because it's been my theory that Jack Kaiser made the play, and he was like, Jack Kaiser made this play 100%. X didn't do crap. Like, so
Well, no, I actually we talked about that on the podcast
Yeah.
after that game. I encourage people to go watch that. It's an easy one to find. It's the first quarter interception that precedes the run.
Yeah.
So the Jeremiah Love run, Kaiser undercuts the route, right? And because of
Yeah.
that, it sails and it goes right to Xavier
he's
Watson.
like, he is coached to get to the backside hash like that. If you're the linebacker and they run that concept, you haul your ass to the backside hash because that's exactly where the ball is going to go. And there was a play against Virginia where he didn't do that. And Marcus was like, he got his ass ripped for it. Well, lo and behold, a month later, plays going to the backside hash. He hauls his ass there. Where's the ball? Boom! It's right there, and Rourke has no chance to make that completion. It sails to Xavier Watts, and like one play later, Jeremiah Love's sprinting down the sideline. So yeah, that was kind of interesting to see like how a mistake turns into a positive play a month later. On it's kind of example of a coaching point taking root.
Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by Notre Dame alum Go Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With more than a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. We'll be back with segment 2, Burning Up the Boards.
Welcome back to segment 2 of the Irish Illustrated Insider, our favorite portion, Burning Up the Boards. And our first question comes from Happy Keith Gilmore. That's a pretty good name. Please list the position groups until you all agree one is not playoff worthy. That's top 12 by season's end. Giddy up, Tim O'Malley.
Yeah, so not championship worthy. I did this once on a radio show and it was fun. So I'm going to make it as easy. I'm going to try to go. I want to keep it going as long as we can where we all agree. That's kind of the point.
Okay.
So running back.
Yep.
Yes.
See how this goes? It was pretty simple. Offensive line.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Defensive back.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. Now, I have to be smart. Pull this one out. Quarterback.
No.
I'm I'm really close. I think coin flip. I think the talent is playoff worthy. We don't know. So to me, I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying we don't know because I do think the talent is playoff worthy.
Should I have gone linebacker first?
Yes, you
Yes.
absolutely. I
Yes,
can't
that's
believe
what.
you didn't.
No, that's what well, I wanted to make it interesting for the
Idiot.
thing there. So linebacker would be this farthest,
I
and then
remember my first
quarterback.
podcast.
Yep.
Quarterback is before defensive line when you're trying to go down the list, though, right?
That
That was
I
kind of
don't
where I
know. I
jumped
think
to.
that's a conversation. Because I think that if you looked at Bryce Young, Bubakar, and then I think like the collection of five D tackles, I I would probably make the argument for defensive line because I just think that like I get it, quarterback is the most important position on the field, but like edge rusher and corner are 2 and 3 or 3 and 2, depending on how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And I think that their edge rush game has a chance to be pretty freaking good.
And like I think in terms of linebackers, like the way the game is today, like if you don't have guys that can protect the middle of the field and play sideline to sideline, then sometimes it doesn't matter how damn good your secondary is. So I think because of that, that also accentuates the value and importance of what Notre Dame has at linebacker.
So if I didn't blow it there, we actually could have gotten all the way down to like
Yep.
7 position groups, right? So
One's on
quarterback,
you.
tight end, and I think special teams we just don't know because you don't know how Burnett will kick. Like
What
Mitch
about wide
Peter, we knew a
receiver
lot more. Wide receiver,
for both of you guys?
it not now. It would not be playoff worthy now. I don't believe Pro Football Focus has them ninth in the country. Do you know that?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
The United States?
Yes. United States of America.
No, just Georgia.
Uh, yeah. Pro Football Focus has Notre Dame ninth.
Huh.
I mean, I think we tried to do like you could. What's a good 1-2 punch? Well, Malachi Fields just joined the second or third best receiver of the college football playoff semifinal and final, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting dynamic looking at it that way. But it's tough to. I was gonna say tight end last because there's just not enough people in the tight ends room. Obviously, you can't.
So that's maybe I'm just being argumentative for the sake of it, but I think that Eli Raridon will have a if you just went Fields, Greathouse, Raridon, who will like excel the most? I would probably argue for Raridon.
Anyone who's listened to this podcast
Yeah,
any of the
I
last
would
two
not.
years really knows I'm pretty bullish on Raridan, which is why I think we're all pretty high on Raridan having a
Yeah,
breakout
but
type season this year. And then now, after we've all sat down with Marcus Freeman last Thursday, whenever it was, and heard how bullish the staff is on James Flanagan, then I think I have Notre Dame's tight end group plus Kevin Bauman. Fisher moved there in the spring just because he's selfless. He's a body. He's played some ball. He's tough. So, I think because of all of that, and then maybe Cooper gets back at some point during the season. I don't know, but I don't think there's a bunch of tight end units a whole lot better than Notre Dame out there
I would
if
just
they
say
stay
like
healthy.
if you told me Notre Dame had to run 12 personnel, like that would be the end of the discussion.
Sure,
But if they're an 11 personnel and Greathouse is a slot and Raridan's the tight end, like
that's a
that's
problem.
good luck with that.
Yeah,
yeah.
So yeah, I think that JB, you are to Eli Raridan what I was to Riley Mills, like high on him 2 years in advance, but we'll finally be right in the end.
I uh I would stop short on tight end just because it's got to happen on the field first. Um,
sure.
yeah, yeah, that's my move, JP.
That's your move.
Yeah. But I see the point. And then I think we just got to put special teams on hold. But either way, I was supposed to do linebackers before quarterbacks, so that's too bad. This question from Glass Half Realistic. I like that one, especially with the follow-up question. 3 of Freeman's losses have been egregious, while another was a faceplant. Assuming he means Louisville there. I don't want to characterize Clemson, but that was a wounded animal that Notre Dame healed. Do you believe there will be a similar problem loss this season? So I don't think he's looking for like NIU weirdness, but I get the point that Stanford's a 16-point, spread. Louisville was a problem loss. We all picked Notre Dame to beat Clemson. No matter what we
Yeah.
missed on that one, we all picked Notre Dame to beat Clemson.
This is a show me the loss question.
This is a show me the loss question because I think we all say that Freeman turned the corner for Notre Dame with the big wins. Can he avoid the problem loss? You
Because
don't have to pick one. Would you think
yeah,
there will be one?
I think there will be one.
I don't think there's a game that Notre Dame loses this year where we all say, where did the Irish go? There's probably a game that Notre Dame loses this year that maybe it has a chance to win, but I don't Notre Dame's not going to lose to Purdue. And that would to me be
No,
the equivalent.
no, no, no,
That
no.
would be the equivalent of the NIU loss
Yeah,
would be Purdue on this year's schedule, and that's not
I'm
going to happen.
I'm talking like Arkansas, USC,
I would say USC problem
Syracuse.
loss is only if it's like the 11 game, the last time they lost here, Pete, where you're
Yeah,
like,
no, that would be bad.
they didn't show up.
Yeah, I just think that they play. I've said this before. Like, I think they play a bunch of Georgia Techs from last year, but
Yeah.
like Haynes King was healthy, and like if you play that game 5 times, you're probably going to lose it once.
Yeah, that's a good
He's
point.
thinking, yeah, I was thinking problem loss could be like you go out to Pitt and you just don't play well for some.
That I mean, that could happen.
Yeah.
That could I'd be stunned that particular game. I'd be
Yeah, but
stunned because
just
I
gotta,
think
it's always
Pitt
a
is
stun.
very
It's always a
much
weird one though. It's
yeah.
always a strange one when it happens. I think
yeah.
that's
I think
I mean,
Pitt's very much on a downward trajectory. Here's the other thing now. We've talked about Marcus Freeman's growth. They just played in the college football game. So there's always a bullseye with Notre Dame, but he enters this season with a bigger bullseye than ever before, in my opinion.
yeah, that's why I just see someone was pointed out on our board because I said I would take the 15.5 with Boise State. Someone pointed on the board, like, I think they could be up for that. It's the NC State game where you have USC coming up afterwards, even though there's a break that I don't know. It's hard to be that perfect
Yeah,
coach
and
in that
I mean they
situation.
haven't been, and I don't. I mean, as much as they absolutely destroyed people, basically after NIU with like Louisville was like a legit team, but I mean the consistency that they showed in blowing people out was really impressive. But I think that the teams that they're playing are much better this year than they were last year.
And
Yeah,
they were on the verge of running Louisville out of the stadium and then let them
Such a
fall
weird
back into
game.
it. Was 24-7 in the blink of an eye, it seems like.
yeah, yeah. That was strange one all around. Well, what's his name? Who's the wide receiver that decided to start playing football again? And we didn't think it was going to matter.
Oh yeah.
It was his first game back, and all of a sudden
Yeah.
he's jumping. He had a
Transfer
touchdown
from
over.
Alabama.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jumping over Leonard Moore for his only.
Yeah.
When that happens, it proves you pretty good. From Indy 11, who will have the most snaps at middle linebacker this season, Bowen or KVA? And he has the same question for Viper and slot receiver. I have a good answer for linebacker.
I
Go for
was going to say KVA.
I was going to put KVA at will part of the time, so he'll have more.
That's what I was going to say. I think KVA plays more snaps.
Yeah,
That's how I answer that question.
Yep.
That's right.
Position versatility. I'm excited. That would be the one thing. We won't really see it because they would not show this early in camp, but Bowen and KVA in camp together will be an interesting thing if we watch practices like the 18th instead of early in camp.
Oh, I
I
think
would like to see that.
we're going to get a lot of that. I mean,
Yeah.
we saw that in
Yeah.
spring, didn't we?
I think that's an interest, which makes it interesting for that hurts playing time of obviously for Osbury and Sneed because Will
Yeah.
is their secondary position.
It also
too.
hurts the opposing offense.
Yeah, so just the entire the point of the plan, huh?
Yeah.
So who do we
Viper.
think? Who do we think at Viper? And then I think Great
I
House.
mean, I realize it's not Viper anymore, but like that the essence of Viper.
Yeah.
If Traore is healthy, forget about it. Like that guy, you could not go to a lab and produce somebody for that position who looks better than Boubacar Traore.
Yeah, he would be mine too. It's left and right now. But he would be one of the two on the left or the right. Is that the best way to say it?
Yeah. I mean, if you put
Yeah.
Bryce Young and Boubacar Traore out there at the same time,
Yeah.
Good
come
one.
on.
Yeah.
And JB, I think you said it. Slot is Great House. So I guess let's say X. Maybe he's thinking of Great House as an X, but who is your
I just have a sneaky Will Pauling
that's going to
suspicion
get more?
that he's gonna not that he's gonna beat out Faison, but he's just gonna maybe be more productive and more reliable than Faison.
Third more snaps, is that fair? So I mean third in snaps, so like Great House Fields Pauling, are you saying?
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think the more we get a little bit of distance from spring camp, the more I continue to hear about Will Pauling. I'll put it that way. I've heard a lot and a lot of encouraging things about Will Pauling as we've cleared more time from camp and just what he did over the balance of spring in March and April.
From Jim Booney, CRS, much has been made about the upperclassmen leadership losses from last year's team. Whose absence on the 25 roster is being overrated and who isn't being talked about enough? And Jim Booney says for overrated, he says Howard Cross because of injury, and underrated is Pat Coogan.
Hmm. I mean, I think overrated I think Cross is probably the right answer. Um,
Yeah, he just wasn't Howard Cross. I
yeah,
mean,
just because he wasn't Howard Cross, so it's like I don't know, kind of not the essence of the answer,
right.
or the essence of the question. I mean, maybe it's Kaiser. I mean, we talked about that on a previous podcast. Like, how much are they going to miss Jack Kaiser? I contend like a ton. And yet, Bowen and KVA are both like film junkie types of guys that maybe you won't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Kaiser, how much they miss Jack Kaiser, I think, is a really interesting test case for how much institutional knowledge actually went out the door after last season.
Right.
And I think we don't wait any time whatsoever to get that question answered because I
No.
think it'll be put to the max game one at
Yeah.
Miami.
I know overrated is not Xavier Watts because that's you can't quantify that one. Leonard?
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
This is a different way of moving the ball, right? I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter how you score your touchdowns. But it does matter on 3rd and 8 that you can pass better. I
and
think
it
it
matters
matters
on
more
third
on
and two
third.
when you get stuffed.
Right. On that's a good question. So is it more important that CJ Carr can just deliver more often on 3rd and 6, 7 and 8, and you can try Jeremiah Love and Aeneas Williams on 3rd and 2? Or is it better to be automatic on 3rd and 2 and 4th and 1 because you're Riley Leonard but struggle
Yeah.
in the passing game? That's a tough.
That one's hard
Underrated.
to
I don't know
answer because
about
the
Coogan
offense is
being
so
underrated in
different, even
this.
though Denbrock has contended that it's not going to be.
Yeah. That's not part of it has to be. That's not possible. I disagree with the Coogan or Spindler or Pendleton, who do you ever want to put in there because the linemen are just better now. And I guess leadership for Coogan is what they're saying, but I think these a lot of these offensive linemen are pretty natural leaders. We didn't know Pat Coogan was a great leader until someone told us, right? And then he got famous on TV. Like some of
Yeah,
these guys do it behind the scenes.
right.
Uh,
I would think that Ashton Craig would fill that role just fine.
Right.
I don't know if Jagasol will grow into that, but somebody that certainly would command respect to that room. Shrouth, I don't know if is vocal enough to do it, but again, commands the respect of the room. Emil Wagner, probably vocal enough to do it
mhm.
and commands the respect of the room.
Yeah.
So, but is not going to launch into a F-bomb tirade on the sidelines.
Well, remember what Freeman said in our meeting. Leadership is not guys that are talking all the time and screaming
Yeah, it's problem
and telling
solving.
people. Yes, it's problem solving is leadership, and I
And I
think we'll
think
have.
that was something, to link that back to something Joe Rudolph said during spring practice. He said that Wagner was out there a lot, kind of correcting, I don't know if it was Absher or whoever the tackle
Yeah,
was. Like
yeah.
he was essentially problem solving. So that's probably a positive sign.
From Martin Evenflow, which assistant coach will have the biggest influence on whether Notre Dame starts the season 2-0 or not? He lists Ash, Denbrock, Biaggi, and Gaduli, who every once in a while I forget has to be listed in these things because he has a brand new quarterback starting Notre Dame.
I think it's Denbrock. For me, it's Denbrock. Um, just because, yeah, he's got to tailor a game plan with a brand new starting quarterback who's never started in college football before, period. I think that's a big difference. Chris Ash is not coordinated at Notre Dame, but he's got a lot of experienced guys back that he's dealing with. I mean, obviously, Gaduli and Denbrock kind of go hand in hand. Um, I mean, Biaggi's special teams, he didn't miss those kicks for Mitch Jeter last year or whatever, and Jeter was hurt. So
The other guys, yeah, the other
yeah,
guys too.
yeah. So and we saw Biaggi's special teams impact games like in an incredible stretch that were different than Mason units blocking all those kicks week after week, but nonetheless just remarkable impact on the game. But for me, it's Denbrock.
I would agree because I don't think that they're going to be able to beat Miami or Texas A&M 23-13 the way that they beat A&M last
Yeah.
year. I don't We talked about the rock fight element going into College Station last year, and it's not like it couldn't be a rock fight, but I think Miami has more material at the skill positions than A&M did, and probably is not going to play the rock fight game that A&M did. So
Yeah,
you
I think
so in that point you got to score and you got to get your quarterback ready to do it.
A&M was such an obvious thing that both teams would be happy to play the rock fight and see who
Yeah.
won. And I don't think either will approach the game in that manner. That's a big part of it. Neither head coach is going to try to protect stuff offensively. I think because they know absolutely 100% know their defense can stop them at any point they want to hitting into those games. Yeah, Biaggi wouldn't be my answer. I mean, but sometimes I like to go the contrarian Pete Sampson route here. I mean, he is the answer if he comes out with the Sugar Bowl plan and the stuff we were seeing in the playoffs.
Right.
Like he was so confident. I don't think you could do that game one. Can you? You didn't have the Bryce. I mean, you mentioned there's 16 weeks of practicing some of that stuff that they were pulling
Right.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's tough to pull that out game one. So I just would not use Biaggi for that. He could give you a leg up because he's so confident now as a special teams coach. I mean, the Georgia stuff was insane. He didn't care if they got called for block punt. I mean, for running to the punter. He just wanted to put it in the punter's mind. I'm going to run into you, and let's see what happens the rest of the way. Yeah, it's got to be Denbrock for me. I mean, Gaduli all of camp, but he's in the barn for him when that game starts, right? Next question from Memphis Phil. Who are the front runners for punt and kick return duties? It's interesting because last year when Jaden Harrison walked on campus, we knew who the kick returner was. It's a little tougher now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back what when we saw it in spring, like Faison wasn't there all the time.
Right.
I wonder if he impacts the game a little bit more in the return game because Will Pauling is there, as we talked about in an earlier question. Um, do they stick or go back to Jarian Price on kickoff return? And is there? I mean, we talk about true freshmen doing that job all the time. It doesn't really happen a whole lot. Whether that's like Dallas Golden did in high school, or I don't know if Mark Zachary is set to do it, but I wonder if they can find somebody that way too.
Yeah, I would think Faison, because there's better wide receiver depth this year too.
Yeah.
And so I think you can feel a little bit better about using Faison as your punt returner. I like Jadarian Price. Didn't I know it's highly unlikely to happen, but didn't we even see Jeremiah Love get some kickoff return work in spring camp this year? I mean, I think that guy would have teams wanting to kick out of bounds if you just dropped him back there deep. Like who wants to risk kicking one short to Jeremiah Love?
I mean, Jeremiah Love at Miami and Jeremiah Love against A&M is a great idea. And then
Right.
Jeremiah Love goes nowhere near the kickoff return against
Right.
Purdue and
Exactly.
Boise State. And put him back there
Yeah.
against USC. And what if he hasn't been back there all year and he's back there against USC? That Biaggi would save that.
Yeah.
Here's my new kick returner for the USC game. It's Jeremiah Love. So I do think you can see him back there for a couple. But Jadarian Price, speaking of USC, brought a kick back 99 yards for a touchdown against USC the last time they came to South Bend. So I think you could see Price in there now. It's always about augmenting their futures too when they do have NFL futures. So he could probably talk them into that. Pete, Golden's a great call. The punt return freshman, you just never see it.
No, yeah, it's a first week of camp gets mentioned by somebody, and then we're like, "Ooh, let's write about it, let's podcast about it," and then it never happens.
Remember it defaulted to Max Hurlin by the end of the year last year.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
it tends to default that way. I think it'll
yeah.
be Jordan Faison actually, and I unless he has trouble catching, and I don't know why it wouldn't be Jordan Faison.
Right. No, they like him a lot. They like him a lot at punt return.
From CMU Pens fan, please rank this year's road trips for Notre Dame football 1 to 5 on your selfish scale. 5 being the Camelback Inn for the Fiesta Bowl, and 1 being Tallahassee hotels of 2021. See, Priester should have been on this one, so we could blame somebody for one of those things.
Go ahead, Pete.
This was pretty clear to me, and maybe this would surprise some people. Although if they're astute listeners, maybe it wouldn't. I had Stanford number 1.
I know because you stay in a little fancy place. So
Yeah, I had Arkansas number 2 because I value new stadiums that environments I haven't seen before that I think are going to be pretty cool. I love Boston, so that's number 3. I think Pittsburgh is very underrated as a city, so I have number 4, and Miami is a definite number 5.
Interesting. Go ahead, Tito. I'll go last.
1 is Arkansas because of what Pete said. I want to go to that. That's more of the game situation. Like that's like A&M was highest on my list too because
Yes.
of the game, the atmosphere in the game. I actually will it won't work out that way because I'll probably say it at an airport hotel or a hotel near Hard Rock, but Miami should be higher because you can find your way to things in Miami that you can do selfishly.
That's the
That'll be a
problem.
lot
You
of
can't. Like,
There's just you can't get there from here. That's the
no,
Nothing's
Boston
easy.
you
thing, not the
cannot. You
Miami
land in
thing.
Fort Lauderdale and then you're stuck there, and the stadium's like in the middle of a neighborhood. I'm not a fan of Miami at all. At least from a football work point of view. I think as a city, it's interesting, but as a road trip this year, I'm sort of treating it like I'm going to Purdue, in and out.
That's a tough one. There's no Boston just ahead of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a fantastic city. I told Jack Freeman I was looking at hotels and I found the greatest deal in the history of the world next door to Heinz Field at a Hyatt, 2-minute walk. And then I realized I was on the wrong weekend, and that's why it was such a good deal. So that hotel is not available when I need to be there. But Pittsburgh's a fantastic city. I love Boston. My family's actually from Boston. San Fran, I don't stay in Pete's fancy Half Moon Bay, so I will put San Fran at the end because I always root for the Manhattan Beach year, as everyone knows that listens to this podcast.
Yeah, for me, I guess I'll go in reverse order. I've got Miami last. I just like it'll be a great atmosphere. I have no doubt the game will be a great atmosphere. That was my first time covering a game at Hard Rock Stadium back for the Orange Bowl. We had shuttle buses and it was still a debacle. So I
We had a police
already
escort. It was still a debacle.
yeah, I already didn't like Miami in general. I've been there for work, I've been there for leisure. I just don't like it. So it's an easy last for me. And then I would probably go Stanford next, just because of the timing in the year and it's so late in the year and it's not easy. Not that anybody gives a crap if it's easy for us or not.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would go probably I'd probably go Boston College, then Pittsburgh, then Arkansas. I guess that'd be mine.
Arkansas is going to be awesome. That was
Arkansas, yeah, and we'll see. Like, I typically don't make quite all the road trips because of other obligations, so we'll see which ones I'm officially on and not on.
apparently not Miami. It sounds like from the selfish point of view. There's
No, I don't know. I don't know how I can avoid Miami.
yeah.
So, yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could be selfish. Um,
Miami needs to be in November, though. We can all agree on that, right? We don't need to go to Miami on Labor Day weekend.
yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah. I'd probably have different
that adds
perspective.
like if you put Miami in the Stanford slot, like if they're redoing the schedule
Yeah.
and like Stanford goes away or USC goes away and Miami becomes the November Thanksgiving weekend game, like we could have a different conversation about
Yes.
it because you're staying a couple extra days afterwards. Then you do have time to get around. I would definitely not be treating it like West Lafayette.
Yeah, so that's it. But some intriguing road trips. I'm a big fan of the city of Pittsburgh as well.
Oh, it's
To
great. Yeah.
even when Jess and I lived in Knoxville, we used to go every spring and just drive up through West Virginia over New River Gorge, which is a surprisingly beautiful drive, and spend a weekend going to baseball games in Pitt, staying right across the Clemente Bridge at the Renaissance downtown. So as you look for hotels, depending the rates, the Renaissance downtown gets a hearty endorsement from
All
me,
right.
and it's a Marriott property.
Yeah, I'm gonna be becoming a Hyatt person here, guys. I don't know if I disappoint you on this one, but
I stayed at the Hyatt a couple of weeks ago for the collective. I got invited out there to the collective coaches event. You should have asked me to talk about it on the show today because I had a big inside behind the scenes story on Football Scoop this week that was awesome. But long story short, I had to stay at a Grand Hyatt for that trip, and I was impressed. And they gave me super early check in, and Jess had an important Zoom that day, so I did officially go ahead and open up a rewards program account with Hyatt because it was worth it.
globalist status, Pete. That's what you need. Get
Okay, I'm
accepted
just
to
I'm
Hyatt.
I'm
Yeah.
mentally tallying John Bryce's pleas for endorsement deals here. Along, we've got steaks. I think there was a mower one a couple weeks ago, and now we're on to Hyatt.
I don't remember the mower one, but I damn sure want that Snake River Farms sponsorship.
Yeah.
Like,
Clip
oh,
that.
we're good.
Get Tom, no longer Tom the intern, to clip that and put that on socials. Get me a deal, Tom.
Our final Tom the Graduate. Do we call him Tom the Graduate for just at least the summer? Does that work out that way?
PTG.
Final question from Flores JM. How would you define success for the football team in 2025? I like this one because there's a minimal requirement I don't think defines it as success anymore. We always say, hey, what's the minimum? I think you have to go a little higher.
I think with a brand new starting quarterback for the first time ever, whichever guy it is, I think we believe maybe I believe Carr will ultimately win it. But with a brand new first time starting quarterback who's either a redshirt freshman or a redshirt sophomore, to me, it's making the playoffs. And then you go from there. So, but that's for me. That means you're probably bare minimum 10-2, and you're in the playoffs. So,
Yeah, it's this question goes in my fan survey every summer, and which I think is next week, and like there is sort of ebbed and flows over the years, but it ticked up quite a bit last year. I think that probably will stay up this year among the fan base. Where if we were just like, hey, did Notre Dame have a successful season? And we didn't have to qualify, like somebody got injured, yada yada.
Right, right. Well, so many guys got injured last year. We shouldn't have to qualify
Yeah,
it, I
like
think.
that was it. You may, if you're in the national championship game, you had a successful season. I think for Notre Dame now, it's not just making the playoffs; it's winning at least one playoff game. That's the new like bar you have to clear. I think for Marcus Freeman, I'm not saying, and they're not going to clear it every time, but
Right.
I think for this year, this team, this is a team that not only needs to make the playoff, but needs to win in the playoff. And like, I think when last season ended, I would have just said make the playoff as being a successful season, but I think that's sort of been ratcheted up a little bit.
I think for me, factoring into the way I answered the question is probably trying to broaden my scope a little bit to answer the question and looking at how irrelevant TCU has been in the years since it played for the national championship, how much Washington fell off last year. Now, look, I know they had a coaching change and all of that. And there's some other teams you can go look at in the playoffs. Look at Michigan going from winning the title to barely being a 500 team last year. So for me, that's why I think get back to the playoffs because you stay at the forefront of the national college football conversation. And if you win a game, then it's a bona fide successful season. But I think success is again returning to the playoffs because then you've made it 2 years in a row, and then you start joining some pretty damn good company if you make it to the college football playoff. 12 teams or not, twice in a row.
I see both points. It's almost like if you're going to go in and lose this year, then the next year you got to go in and win a couple games again to make it seem like it's
Sure.
successful for a 3 year run. But
Right.
in a vacuum, I get it. Make it this year. I think I side more with Pete though. The one because I expect this team, I now think of it as championship metal. Like if they get in a playoff game and they're not playing like an absolute all-time juggernaut, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh, they're 14 and a half point underdogs and they're injured and they're not going to win this game. Like the Fiesta Bowl in 15, where they couldn't possibly win, Pete. They had nothing left. All the players were hurt. They couldn't beat
Right.
Ohio State. If they just go into a game and you're like, yeah, they're 3 point underdogs at Tennessee, I expect Marcus Freeman's team to walk in and win the game now, where I would not have thought that before last year's run.
No,
Well,
I think just a way to phrase this a little differently is like if they make the playoff and lose right away, I wouldn't consider that a successful or an unsuccessful season.
Right.
It would just be a push. Like it would be like you bet and it was a push. But I think to be successful, you've got to win. If you don't make it, clearly unsuccessful.
Right.
And like, yeah, there's some gray area. Like if let's say they host Indiana again, if you lost that game, I wouldn't say you had a successful season. If you go to Tennessee, or let's say you go to Texas, forget Tennessee. Let's say you go to Texas and lost in the first round. I wouldn't say that's like, well, this season was unsuccessful.
Right.
You may have just run into more of like the Ohio State from 2015.
yeah. So, and hopefully this segment is not only soon to be brought to you, Burning Up the Boards, brought to you by Guy Wang and ESQ, but hopefully also Snake River Farms, SRF. But you guys just opened this Burning Up the Board segment saying you didn't see the quarterback position as a playoff position group right now. And so then I think that I have a hard time reconciling, and I answered it as we don't know, but I believe the talent is playoff worthy. So I have a hard time reconciling that they have to win a playoff game to have a successful season when we're answering a question. Either we don't think it's a playoff group or we don't know if it is.
I think I'm going to channel the old coach, not Brian Kelly, but the ones that say they're not freshmen anymore. By the time December comes around, CJ Carr's not a freshman anymore, and he's also a sophomore technically. He goes to
Yeah,
class as a
by
sophomore.
December, it better be a
Yeah.
playoff looking quarterback room.
Or Brian Kelly, like when you're a senior and he says to you, he's learning down in distance. He's a young
I
player.
don't think CJ Carr is going to struggle to get the concept of 1st and 10.
That's I think it's the all-time moment where nobody else really noticed what was going on. You and I looked at each other like,
Oh my God, that guy, he
he's
just
getting
buried
down
him.
in distance better now. He's your senior quarterback, man. I'm kind of hoping that's happening for him. But that's Andrew Hendricks reference twice on 1 week podcast to John Bryce. I believe you brought him up last time too.
I did.
Bad
Absolutely.
sign if he says Kenny Minchie's getting his down and distance better in 2027. That will not be good for his Notre Dame future. We'll be back Monday on June 9th, but there's going to be a lot of Irish invasion discussion that day. We're going to have segment one, at least. We're going to have Eric Thomas, Drew Mentok, perhaps Brian Alt, industry experts everywhere on the planet. And then JB, are you off this Monday?
Yeah.
Yep. And
I,
then
I, I
segment.
thought because I thought I was off
Oh, yeah.
Monday because of the line of Irish invasion. I can bring nothing to the table.
Yeah, there's nice. Well, you could bring a sponsor and help everybody, actually.
I'm working on it. Clearly, I'm pandering for it.
For John Bryce of Football Scoop and Pete Sampson of The Athletic, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thanks for listening to Irish Illustrated Insider.